Final Cut Pro, you'll notice right away that it has a very similar look and feel to iMovie. This was done on purpose, so this way people could really easily move from iMovie to Final Cut Pro. That's first off the bat. If you know how to use iMovie, you should have no problem with Final Cut. There's a few things I just want to point out right off the bat is the organization of your footage. So in Final Cut Pro, you have something called libraries and then events and then projects. Libraries are the larger folder where all of your various projects are going to take place. So if you come into my movies folder, which is by default where your libraries are going to save, you'll see I have a library called baking. So all of the projects that I do that involve baking are going to go here. I also have another library called video classes Zoom. So all of my projects that have to do with my video classes and the Zoom calls, they're going to go in here. And then anything with Sid goes in here. So it's just a way to sort of break down what it is you're editing so you can easily find things. Okay, so you'll see I have opened right here my Zoom video classes and my baking. Now within those libraries, you have something called events. So for baking, I have an event for my cake pops tutorial that I did. I have another one for the macaroons class. Okay, so each event is going to hold your raw footage for each project. And then within the event, you have your projects. So I have two edits here of the macaroons class. I have one that's a longer one. It's 13 minutes. And I have a short one that was just a sort of social media promo, and that's 31 seconds. So that's just sort of the breakdown. And then you'll notice within the macaroon event, I have all of my files. Okay, I have the footage, I have any sound I put in, and I even have a photo that I use at the beginning of all of my baking tutorials. Okay, so in order to make a new event, you're going to go to File, New Event. You'll notice you can also do a new library, a new project, right? But I'm going to do a new event, and let's call this Custom Cookies because I'm going to be doing that later today. I want to make sure it goes into the baking project, or the baking library rather, but I can pick a different library over here. I can have it by default to create a new project, and I'm just going to hit OK. All right, so here it is, Custom Cookies. All right, there's nothing in here and I have this untitled project. To rename it, I just click on it and now I can call it Customized Cookies. Okay, to import any footage, I can do Command I on my keyboard. I can click this little down arrow up here or go to File, Import Media. Okay, so I'm going to click here. And now I get a browser window where I can navigate to any footage that I have on my computer. This includes music, it includes photos, anything that I want to use within my project, I can find it in here. So let's say these are from a Zoom call. I'm just going to grab one of these and I'm going to make sure it's going to the right event and then import selected. Okay, so here it is. And then just like iMovie, I can use this yellow little box to drag over the parts I want to bring in, or I can bring the whole thing down into my timeline. Now, it automatically is going to set the properties of the timeline of the movie based on whatever the first clip is. So all this is saying right here is this is the format that first clip that I dragged in is in. Do I want to change the timeline for that? And usually I don't change anything here and I'll just hit OK. All right, so just that's what that is, but you can kind of ignore that and hit OK. All right, so similar to iMovie, right, you have the playback bar, okay, this red bar right here, and you can drag at any point of your timeline. You have your sound, audio waveform. All right, in order to make cuts, the shortcut is Command B. All right, so you'll notice I just made a cut where the playhead bar is, right? You'll know all of your shortcuts are over here. All right, so select, it's the letter A, blade, it's the letter B, to zoom, it's Z, all this kind of stuff. All right, so now I can click this beginning part of the timeline, hit the delete key, and it's all deleted. Now, the main differences between Final Cut Pro and iMovie is in Final Cut, you can layer your footage and your audio endlessly. In iMovie, it really only gives you the option to layer it once. So I'm going to just show you what I mean by that. I'm going to click here and hit the letter B for my blade tool. So now I have my blade tool, click again, and now I can drag this clip above. All right, so now I have like this double layer thing, which is useful if I want the audio from down here and not from up here. So I can actually now mute this sound. Okay, so that was just dragging the audio bar that's going horizontally across the audio and dragging it down. So now you'll see this footage on top, but you're gonna hear the footage below, okay? And let me actually, I'm gonna show you a better example of this. Let's go into my, Cake Pops video. Oh, right, let's go into my macaroons video here. I think, yeah, so here's a good example of that. I have over here me on the bottom demonstrating, talking through the ingredients, but then on the above I have this overhead shot. So if I hit play.
Right. So now I'm just left with an egg yolk, and I'm gonna put that egg yolk in my separate little bowl so I can use it for a different project later on.
Okay, so it's just a little visually clear. And then over here, I was able to do this cool effect.
2.5 cups of sweetened or unsweetened shredded coconut, 3 egg whites, 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and then a 1/3 cup of sugar if you used sweetened.
Okay, so I was able to stack all of this text in a way that you can't do that in iMovie, right? In order to have the text appear as I'm saying to the audience what ingredients to use. And in order to do that, you just come up to your text up here, and this is also where various effects are. So you have all these text animations, just like in iMovie. I typically just stick with basic title and sort of make my own effects on it. But you drag it down over your clip, and you can drag it multiple times. You can move it and cut it just like you can in iMovie. That's no different. But again, you can stack them stack multiple. In iMovie, you can only do one. So here's my title here. I can change it. Title, I'm just making it caps. I can change the fonts, okay? You have all of these settings that you can play with. If you want to change the color, you can come down to where it says face and show, and you can change the color of it. All right, you can add a drop shadow, which is sometimes really, really helpful. Okay, you can change the size of it. You can change the position, rotation. This is all really cool things you can play with. One thing I want to show you that's really neat that you can do is there's these things called keyframes. And what keyframes basically do is it tells your computer that you want the properties of your keyframes to be something at one point, and then when it gets to this other keyframe, it's going to change, and the computer kind of reads the difference and makes the changes accordingly. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So here I have this title, and I want this title to fly in. Okay, so I want it to end up here in the middle, but when the clip starts, I want it to be off screen. So it's going to kind of float in. So I'm going to go to the point in the clip where I want the title to land. So by this point, I want this to be here in the center. Okay, so I'm going to come over to my position, and I'm going to hit this little diamond, and that's my keyframe. So I've just activated my keyframe. You'll notice it's nice and yellow. All right, I'm now going to go back to the beginning of my clip, and I'm going to select my, I'm going to come over to my transform tools. I'm going to select my title, and I'm going to drag it. Okay, you'll notice there's this like bar going across, and that's the animation between the keyframes. Okay, so it's just gone across. I'm gonna hit done. So here's what happens.
From your yolks. I have my eggs here, and I hope you can all see me, right? I tried to position my camera so it's pretty easy to see.
All right, so there's that cool little thing. The other thing that you can do in Final Cut that you can't with iMovie is I can actually select the title and move it to different places around the screen, which is pretty cool. Okay, and again, if I don't want any of that, I can hit delete. You have all these things, these generators. Okay, one thing that's really neat that I make use of a lot, I'll just show you. Let's see, I think I have it here. I use just a black bar, a black screen, drag it to one half of my screen and change the opacity. So this way I can list like ingredients and stuff, which is pretty cool. Okay, or sometimes I'll use a white screen so that way I can put it behind a photo. So the white screen, it's hard to tell really what it's doing, but it just sort of is adding this white bar on the bottom, which is helpful. You have transitions over here, just like an iMovie. It's all drag and drop. And when you're done and you want to export, File, Share, Master File. Okay? And it gives you similar settings to choose from, like that you have an iMovie, and you would hit Next. And go, to select where you want to save it. I really just encourage that you play with the software. If you have a specific project in mind, it's really, really helpful. And ask me if you have any questions.